You are listening to From Sobriety to Recovery with Jesse Mogul. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to From Sobriety to Recovery. I am your host, Jesse Mogul, and as always, it is an honor and a privilege to have you here for the next half hour. So much is going on in our world, and one of the things I enjoy doing the most when it comes to this podcast is seeking out other people who are doing amazing things in our community and then bringing them to your attention, because I think that one of the best ways we can give back to the community is become more involved in our community. And one of those ways I've done that during this pandemic is to bring you on other podcasters and let you get an idea of what it is they talk about on their recovery-centered shows. So today I'm bringing you Chastity Thielin. So happy I got that last name right. Chastity Thielin. And she is a mother of four. She's a personal trainer. She's a podcaster of the Retired Blackout Artist. Go check that out on Instagram. And she's active in her life. She's active in her recovery. She's active in our community. And she is here with us today. Chastity, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm so excited to be here.
I am excited to have you here. Since the moment I came across your Instagram profile, I just loved the Retired Blackout Artist. I was like, man, I was a blackout artist. I was like, yeah. I was like, what a great name for the show. What was it that fired you up about your sobriety and recovery journey that said, I've got to do a podcast about this?
Well, thank you for the introduction. And for me, the name of the Retired Blackout Artist podcast came from a coffee cup. Whenever I got sober, I was kind of like you when we talked earlier. I was on fire for my recovery. I did treatments in a facility. Spent some time there, got out. The next day, I pretty much ran into my first 12-step program, went to a meeting, and just stuck around. Grateful that I did. Thankfully that I did stick around, and I let those people embrace me. 3 months sober, this is what happened. So 3 months sober, I had a sponsor. I told her that I wanted to start sponsoring women, and she's like, oh, hold on. Let's put the brakes on here because, you're only on step, whatever it was, and you're not quite there. But that's how on fire I was for sobriety. I wanted to open, a home for women in recovery. I just wanted to help everybody. So adding a couple of years onto that. And I just said, I really enjoy talking, interacting with addicts and alcoholics, in different stages of the recovery. I love to hear people's journey. I love to, you and I had talked earlier. I love to see what you're doing with this second part of your life. And so anyway, the podcast came to my mind, and I'm one of those people, I get something in my mind. It doesn't matter what it is. It's in my mind. By God, I'm going to do it. I'm going to show you I can do it. So there's your long answer.
Well, it's such a great answer because we talked about, and for y'all who want to check me out on the Retired Blackout Artist, I'll be on there soon. So we're doing a podcast swap where she's coming on, and on hers I discussed how I'm still in the pink cloud, right? Like I'm still enthusiastic about my sobriety and recovery. I think it's just so awesome. This, like you said, second life. You have this enthusiasm for your recovery journey that just exudes over the microphone. What are some of the ways that do you have to put a lot of effort into doing that? Or is it just your natural beingness that keeps you fired up? Because doing a podcast and doing it consistently, it's already working in and of itself. But then also having it being around a topic that means so much to us, it can either become overwhelming or it can become exuberatingly beneficial. Where are you at on that spectrum? Because you're fired up. I love it.
Maybe I need to take it back, reel it in a little bit better.
I will never tell you to reel it in. I will never tell you to reel it in.
No, Jesse, with my drinking, at the end of my drinking, I never wanted people to know how much I was drinking. I didn't want them to know how bad things were. In my recovery, I am very open about being an alcoholic in recovery. I don't mind, the neighbors can know, baseball people can, baseball mom and dads can know. To me, it doesn't matter. I think the more people that know, I'm out there. They know who to call or who to come to if they have an issue, or if their child has an issue, if their brother or sister. That's because I am so open about it. I have had a lot of people who have reached out to me, not just people that listen to the podcast, but I'll get phone calls from people here in the city that will say, hey, so-and-so, one of our mutual friends told me you're in recovery. Can you please talk to X and let them know where they can go for help, what they can do? And I do a lot of volunteer work also. I go to 12-step meetings. I sponsor other women. I, back to the volunteer work, I volunteer with the Redemptionist Center here in Kansas City, which helps underprivileged families. They help alcoholics and addicts with placement and with food. We're doing food drives this summer.
Awesome. Did I lose you?
No,
don't stop.
I kind of went on, and then I kind of forgot what the question again.
Well,
I ramble on.
No, and we're going to leave that in too, because I like people to hear, just the back and forth, because it started off with, you're fired up, and what brings that energy that you bring to your addiction recovery. And it sounds like a lot, because you offer your services to the community. You're very vocal, right? You're not out there, I am sober, everybody talk to me, but people know, and you're opening that up. And I love that, because I really think that that's one of the biggest things we can do is release the stigma. I actually think it's a badge of courage when I say, oh no, I'm sober. Well, why? It wasn't for me anymore. My drinking became it's just too much, and I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. So I love that you're vocal about it. And then you're off and you're volunteering at food banks, and you're doing so much for your community now. Were these things that were you this involved with your community back when you were drinking, or is it, were you just pretty much like, I'm in my garage, chain smoking cigarettes and drinking the vodka?
That's what I was like, Jesse. Oh man, my kids, they didn't know when they came home. They didn't know what mom they were going to be faced with. Is she going to be the happy drunk, or is she going to be the mean? Not like I wasn't physically mean, but just talking, just garbage coming out of my mouth. Mm-hmm. They didn't. My husband, he didn't want to come home from work. He would be hours late. Not that he was going to the bar, but he just did not know what kind of a, shit show he was going to face when he got home. So no, I was not out in my community volunteering. No, when I was drinking there, especially at the end, I was the one who had on a stocking cap because I hadn't washed my hair for a couple of days, no makeup, wearing old t-shirt and old sweats because I did some woodworking, and it would have paint or stain on them. And I would wear my pink Crocs, dressed like this. I looked like a damn homeless person. I would go to the liquor store or the grocery store, whichever one I hadn't visited, yesterday, to buy my booze. And, no, I was not a person involved or a person that you really wanted. I wasn't socially accepted whenever I was drinking. I could clean up, for school events. Sometimes I went drunk. Sometimes I went to my kids' baseball games drunk, and was asked to leave.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a 360 compared, or 180, I guess, from what I was like.
One of the things that, for those of you who didn't necessarily hear that little sentence in there, but I want to bring it out because I noticed it, because I did the same behavior, is going to the grocery store or the liquor store, which one I had not been to yesterday. And it's very interesting that I had a liquor store on the corner, like 3 minutes from my house, and I would purposely walk much further away to another one, right? Because I'm like, this person can't see me 2 days in a row. Or I was just here 3 hours ago and I bought a pint and I need to go back for another pint. That was an hour. This person can't see me. So it's very interesting how we'll go to our kids' sporting events intoxicated, right? And then that becomes a whole thing. But we don't want the liquor store owner to know that we're addicted to the stuff he's selling us.
Yeah. Exactly. Like they can't tell that we're alcoholics already, right?
Because the pink Crocs and the dirty sweats were a dead giveaway, honey. You don't have to worry about trying to only come in here one every 3 days. Basically, I'm actually upset that you're not giving me your money. Let's have that conversation right now.
Probably.
And I don't often, if at all, really touch too much upon the rock bottoms or the stories that led you, because we all have them in a very similar fashion. I love to hear what that day one, that week one, that first month is. And because I have my own story, but I wasn't married, I didn't have children, I am super interested in knowing what was that beginning stages of the recovery process like for you when you had to talk to your family about it, and you had to sit down at the dinner table and say, hey, you know what? Mommy's got an idea and I think she's going to run with it. What was that like when you had that conversation? Because that must have been vulnerable and tough, and I could only imagine. So let's, if you will, please dive into that first day, week, month, and express that.
Okay. Yeah. There's my end. I had attempted suicide. So my then 10-year-old had seen me in the backyard bleeding, and then I was not court ordered to go to treatment, but I was at the hospital and they said, pretty much, you don't have a choice. You're not going home. So I went into treatment. I did, a week and a half there. When I came, they told me I was going home. I was not expecting that. And I had that, being in a facility, I had that, I just felt like I was okay. As long as I was there, I was going to be okay. I wasn't going to drink. Then when they told me they were releasing me, I was going home, and my husband, who I had only spoken to once in the week and a half that I was in treatment, that he was coming to get me. That was kind of tough because that was the first time we had seen each other, had spoken to each other, and I cried. It was a 30-minute drive home, but I cried. I was terrified to come home. My oldest son had, I've been married 3 times. I have a collection of husbands. So my oldest son had, years before had moved it back with his dad. My 2 middle children had, the month before all this happened, they had moved in with their dad because they didn't know what they were going to come home from school to. And so really the only child that was living here was my then 10-year-old son and my husband. And I was scared to death though, because Jesse, like you said, I would sit in the garage, I would drink and I would smoke. I didn't know what coming back to that, am I going to go back to my old behaviors? So that was terrifying. But, and I sat in the driveway for probably a good 20 minutes. Finally, I came inside, and my youngest son, he was playing video games. He just kind of looked over his shoulder like, she's home. It wasn't like, oh, mommy, you're home. No, it wasn't that at all. It was like, she's home. I had text my middle son, told him I was home, text my daughter. My daughter wouldn't come over. My middle son did come over, and he's a Marine now, and he's always been the kid that he would, whenever I was drunk and, I'd be, I'm okay to drive. And he would always be like, Mom, are you okay? Mom, hey, are you okay? So he's always been kind of sensitive. It made me feel good that he came to see me, but my other kids, they really didn't want anything to do with me. So it was tough. And I knew that I had a long road. I had been told I have a long road to go to gain their trust back. And yeah, I don't know, with kids, that's hard because people say, well, they're so resilient. Yeah, maybe, but they remember everything.
Well, it's like us. I mean, there was, the one thing all addicts have in common is that we have suffering. We suffered a great deal in our childhoods, and then that, this eventually led us down the path of addiction. So we think, okay, kids are resilient. I'm like, yeah, well, I was a kid once, and look how I internalized everything that happened around me, and look what I ultimately ended up doing. Right. So then you're right. You have these kids that are resilient, but they're also like, yeah, but you got kicked out of my baseball game, or you showed up drunk to my birthday party. Like, you know what? You great. You're sober, but it's like, it's going to take me a little bit more time than just a few days to realize that you actually are actively doing this. What was that process like over, because now we both have the same sobriety year. So we're both in that 3.5 range. What was that like growing closer to them through your addiction recovery and letting them see like, hey, this Chastity, I'm sticking around, and I'd really like to get to know you.
Yeah. I mean, that is kind of funny when I think about that, Jesse, because my sobriety date is February 21st of 2017. And like you said, we're both, 3.5 years here. And my daughter, she came back around, but then here in the last 9 months, almost a year, actually, I haven't seen her in a year. She, I don't know. I think the sober mom, she's 19, she'll be 20, and she's having fun now. She's, having fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
like, like college kids do.
Yeah.
So she really doesn't want to, have conversations with a mom that's sober, that's trying to tell her, maybe you should cut back. Maybe this might be a problem. My oldest son, I am able to help him. His dad died tragically a few years ago, and he drinks a lot. He knows he drinks a lot, and but he can talk to me about it. But the youngest one, he's 14 now, and he's the one, even though mom's been sober, 3.5 years, I came home the other day from the grocery store, and I bought this Italian soda pop. It's in a tall glass bottle. I didn't even notice it, but the gal had wrapped it in a brown bag.
Oh, yeah.
So I come home and we're unloading groceries, and he's like, his face just drops, and he says, "Did you buy wine?" And I'm like, "No, what are you talking? Oh, no, that's not wine." But in the back of his head, Jesse, I think he's just maybe waiting for that other shoe to drop.
Right.
Like, is she really going to stay on with this?
Right. Well, and that's what, my therapist taught me. It's like this homeostasis, right? The whole family got used to balancing the boat with us as an addict. And then we get sober, and now everybody's position needs to rearrange, because where we were once easily balanced. I knew how to get along with Chastity when she was intoxicated. Now she wants to stand up. The whole boat's out of whack, right? And for the daughter just goes away says, "I don't even need the boat." The other son's like, "I'll come back to the boat once in a while." 14-year-olds in the boat. And it's interesting watching that dynamic play out. Do you feel like your sobriety will have more of an effect on how he sees, because here he comes, he's only 4 years away from going off to college, or at least being able to leave the house and certainly find his own addictions, if those are, something that, he might come across. You have more personal ability to actually touch his life and show him a better way now. Do you see how that's like, do you see how your actions and the way you talk with him are being affected by that kind of mentality?
I really do, because, there are kids that are his age or even younger. I had my first drink when I was 12, and there are kids in his school that are doing acid, and they are smoking pot, and they are drinking or doing the the vapes. And he's all into sports. He doesn't have any interest in that. He doesn't have interest in girls right now, and I just want to keep him like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know that's not going to happen. He is going to go off to college. He will have a life outside of these walls. And I really think that, because he'll listen to some of the podcast episodes, whenever I'm editing, and I really think that seed has been planted. He knows that, mom, if it's genetics, okay, mom has this, mom is this. I think the seed's been planted, and I really hope that, I think he's aware. He's heard so many stories with in different podcast episodes about how you can be the normal mom or husband or kid down the street, and then boom, you can also be an addict or an alcoholic.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in high school, I was, straight A student, top 10 in my class, and, in Glee Club and dancing around with all my friends, and Bible study at Thursday mornings at the McDonald's off 46, and then, college, about face. And I love that you bring that up. It's, there's this, you said earlier that you're planting these seeds are being planted. I talk a lot about on my show about how I'm planting seeds, and some people will water them right away and tend the garden, and other people, you plant it and you don't even know where it's going to go. You just know that you've planted it, they'll do with it as they will. And so what were, let's going back to the beginning stages of your sobriety and recovery. What was your mindset going into it? Because what I'm looking for here is a compare and contrast between the seeds that weren't planted when you first started versus the kind of mindset principles and practices you're using now, and where you can see that somebody planted a seed and now look at this beautiful garden that it's turned into. So, big question for how has your mindset changed? What are some of the seeds that were planted in you, and how have you cultivated them now?
As far as me growing up, what seeds were planted, or how I have the difference in me when I was drinking and how I acted around my children to now.
Well, really, okay, you had gone into that facility for 10 days. What was it that they talked to you about then that you can go back and say, wow, they talked about this then, and here I am 3.5 years later, and they were right. They planted that seed then, and I started to behave this way, in accordance to my new world. And now look at this garden I have now. Because I really want the people who are catching on to this, and they're at day 7 or day 17, to feel like, oh, okay, these I want them to be aware that seeds are actually being planted, because sometimes I think that they're not. They think that they're just listening to somebody, you or me, at a podcast, or somebody in front of a classroom saying, this is why you shouldn't drink, and this is what life could be like whenever you're sober for a year. And they're just like, blah, blah, blah. It's like the Peanuts teacher, wah, 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 wah. And I want them to be more aware of the seeds. And so I'm really interested, because I didn't go into a facility, what seeds were planted then, and how you cultivated those whenever you got out.
One of the main things there that comes to mind is the pause. So my counselor in the facility would tell me, especially in conversations with my husband or my kids, not to just, you hear something, okay, it comes in through your ears, and then I have the comeback, boom, right out of my mouth. That's how I was. Now I can do the pause, which means mentally I'm taking my chapstick or my lipstick. Somebody says something to me. I'm taking the chapstick out, rubbing it on my lips before I speak back to them. Just that pause, to give yourself a moment to, okay, do I really want to respond this way? Or should I respond in a more, loving, compassionate manner? Yes. That was a big thing for me as far as a change that I made. And, the second thing was, that I'm okay. I'm not so unique. I'm not so different. Other women have gone through traumatic events, that I went through. Other people grew up the same way that I did. I'm not that unique. I'm not that different. Not everybody goes through those events and throws their life away drinking. We can get through it with more productive manner. Yeah.
It's interesting you say unique, because I have a saying that I talk a lot about on the shows, that we're not special, but we are unique. The problems you've gone through are not special. A lot of the people have had worse. Unique, like a fingerprint. Like we all have our own way of internalizing information and then thus becoming who we are. And so I love that you bring that up, because some people are like, oh, my thing is so unique and so different. I'm like, well, it's not different. It's there's similarities. And some people go off and, like my brother stays away from addiction because he knows better, and I heard it as permission. There was something else that you said in there too that now my brain is, when you're talking about, so I talk a lot about emotionally when you emotionally respond, it's whenever you get triggered, right? So that's a reaction versus response whenever you're emotionally grounded. And so that's where that pause comes in. So I love that you're tying that, because we've talked a lot about that recently. Don't be emotionally triggered, which is a reaction, be emotionally grounded, which is a response. And that pause is the difference. The amygdala wants to say, you're wrong, I'm right, right? Whereas the cerebral cortex, that part in the back, it's taking in some information. And that's what that chapstick maneuver, and whether it's physical or just in your head where you're like, let's just take 10 seconds and make sure we're happy with the words that are getting ready to come out of our mouth.
And sometimes that is so hard, Jesse.
So hard. Especially if somebody says something, and I'm generally mindful of attaching my identity to any kind of belief, because when you do that, you tend to want to punch back when somebody says something that goes against one of your beliefs. But it's like, okay, I can believe what I believe, they can believe what they believe, and I can have empathy for their life and how they came about their own belief structure, right? And not just lash out whenever they don't agree with how I see things.
Yeah, we don't always have to be right. That was something that was hard for me, because I grew up, my dad, he knows, the way he does it, everything is right according to him. My brother is the same way. He knows everything. He knows how to do everything. So, for me, I have to reset that mind thinking. I don't always have to be right. Like you said, even if I know I'm right, I don't have to let everybody else know it.
Yes. It's one of the, I love how you're bringing all these things I talk about on the show. It's like, do you want to be right, or do you want to connect? And if I'm going to sit here and yell at you about why I think that the toilet paper should go over and not under, I was like, okay, right? Like, I mean, let's, and now, some people are like, well, if you have a cat, no, I don't care what animal you might have. It goes over, not under. Do not argue with me about this.
Yes.
Right. But yeah, it's like, take a step back and be like, interesting. So where in your childhood were you taught to do it under and not over? Right. Like, just that simple expansion of the conversation allows you to take a breath, step back, and then, not start a fight where one doesn't need to exist.
Yes. One of the things that I just recently got a new sponsor, because I do the AA 12-step program. My new sponsor, she said that now my brain's gonna lapse. Confrontation is not a form of communication.
Oh, that might be the title of this podcast.
I love that. I was like, oh, you're so smart. Because a lot of times, I'll pick my son up from football practice or baseball practice, and I will go into, instead of just letting him talk to me, I will say, well, how did practice go? Well, how did you hit the ball? Did this person do this? Did that? I'm just constantly asking questions. And maybe that's because, we do podcasts and we're used to asking questions. But I will do that. I'll just kind of drill him. And she said, what if you just got in the car and turned on some music, or, just kind of let him do the conversation instead of you be, the confrontation. I'm like, who would have thought?
Yeah. There's a whole different way to do this now, and this is, because we'll be wrapping up here soon. That's a really good way of segueing into that kind of mindset shifts that you've put yourself through. When you have this idea of like, okay, confrontation is not communication. Are there other little tidbits that you've learned from AA or through your sponsor that you you immediately can, remind yourself, right? Of course, we all have the one day at a time, or, if one is too many, 1,000's never enough. But I love confrontation is not a form of communication. Are there some other really cool ones that you could share with the listeners that you utilize frequently in your recovery?
Oh, man. You're asking me, you put me on the spot now. There are so many good ones. And usually I will write them down, jot them down, and hang them up in my kitchen on a little wall. Some other ones, it's that I don't have to apologize to make other people feel comfortable.
Ooh,
That's
okay.
one that I love. I had to use that a lot in the past 2 years. I don't, because I'm really bad at saying I'm sorry, and I had someone on that did an episode on my podcast that she said, when we say we're sorry, it's kind of like when you're leaving the house and you might say, okay, I love you, see you later. I mean, do we really mean that? Are we really thinking that? Do we, and it's like saying I'm sorry. For me anyway, I'll say, oops, sorry, sorry I brushed into you, oops, sorry I got in your way, oops, sorry, I was walking down the path and you're coming towards me, and me and my dog need to move to the other side. It's kind of a knee-jerk reaction. And so,
Right.
and in my life, there are people that come into our life. They're there for a time, maybe it's to teach us a lesson, or, just for that time, that moment.
Right.
And then
Reason,
sometimes we
season,
just,
lifetime.
yes. And sometimes we have to release them, or I don't want to say cut them out because that sounds so cruel, but sometimes we just have to release them because they have negative energy or whatever it is. But I don't have to apologize to you because I'm releasing you from my life.
Yeah.
I don't have to apologize just to make you feel comfortable so that you're not sniveling and hurt. That's something I have to work on all the time is not, and my oldest son also, something that I'm trying to work with him on, you don't always apologize. You don't have to always apologize.
Yeah. What is it? I try to whether it be pardon me, if you're walking down a grocery store aisle at the same time as somebody else, pandemic aside, masks aside, just in general, if your carts somehow get near each other, you're like, oh, so sorry. I'm not sorry.
Yes.
Pardon me. Right. Or, excuse me, is a good one. Right. Because that there is no guilt, right? Like, excuse me or pardon me. That releases any kind of, oh, I'm so sorry. Because if you always say you're sorry for things that really there's no reason to be sorry about, it's almost like you're apologizing for your existence on the planet.
Yes, exactly. Very well put.
It's like, we're both walking down the aisle, it's like, yes, we're walking down the sidewalk. Yes, we can both turn our shoulders at the same time so we don't bump each other. That again, there's some Midwestern values come into play because people in LA will keep themselves, they're walking their line and they are not deviating from it. You don't want to run into me. You don't want to start a confrontation. That's on you. So it's when you get on the podcast and you interview people like me or other people in general, like what is the messaging, because now I want to talk about your show so it can invite other people to go over and listen to it. What's the messaging that you center your show around? What is it that you want people to take away from what it is you're doing over there at the Retired Blackout Artist?
One of the hashtags I use, and one of the thoughts at the end of each episode or at the beginning, is kindness wins. I feel like so many people are so busy to get here and to get there, and I fall into that category also sometimes. But if we could just be kind, and you don't have to say anything to me, but just a smile sometimes will brighten somebody's day. Or, hey, Jesse, those glasses are rocking, just to be nice and to be kind to one another. So many times we get so involved in ourselves, but on the podcast, it's kind of centered around, I just like to get other people's stories, their journeys on how, what they were like, what they're like now, what kind of great things that they're doing, what kind of examples they are, they're leading by. And just that, because the podcast, it's over 80 countries now that it's listened to in just over a year. We just started July last year. And so that is so exciting, not because it's like, oh, yay, pat me on the back, but because it's getting the message out there. Yes. And again, here I go, getting excited and fired up. But if it can help somebody that's sober curious, somebody that's just new to sobriety, or somebody that even has, 35 years, but just to get that message out there.
What is something you would like to be able to go back and tell your younger version of Chastity about whatever, but your behaviors, where your life was heading because of the way you were acting? Like, what is that message you put your hand on your own shoulder? What is that thing you would say to yourself?
Man, I've thought about this a lot the last week or two. And I think me, grew up in a small town. I didn't have to do what everybody else was doing. I could have been my own self. And also, I didn't have to live the next 30, 40 years of my life living in shame because of one choice or two choices, that I made back then. I didn't have to drink over something for, so much of my life because of choices that I made whenever I was, when I was younger. I don't have to be that person that I was then. I can evolve and grow and become something greater.
Great segue to the final question. If there's a message, if every single addict or human alive could get one positive message from you, all right, somehow you speak these words and all of our brains open up to your message. What would be that one message you would love for everyone to hear? Whether, again, they don't have to just be in sobriety and recovery. It could be just the message Chastity wants to send the world. What would that message be?
No matter how bad you think your life is, no matter if you think there is no way you can be forgiven, no way that you can, dig out of that hole that you're in or that rut, but, especially depression. I fought with depression forever. Man, it doesn't have to be like that. Today can be the start of a brand new you. Today can be where you start the second chapter of your life. Man, I never thought that was possible. And then, being in recovery, meeting people like you, Jesse, has just, we're a family. We may not know each other personally. We may not have the same blood type, but we're a family because we have each other's back. Once you get in there and somebody's going to be there. They're going to be extending that hand. They're going to be there to help you. So don't give up.
Yes, don't give up. And there is a beautiful thing about this community. If you just step into it and just, sometimes, I have people who call me, I didn't even ask them for help. And they're like, hey, just haven't heard from you in a while. Is everything good? It's like, wow, that's awesome. I don't remember ever feeling that way from other people. And I just love that message.
Yeah. And I sometimes I feel bad, Jesse, because I will forget to call or text like my cousins. But, I'm going to text somebody in recovery every day. I'm texting or calling or reaching out to, 5 or more people in recovery.
Yeah.
And my cousins probably won't forgive me, but.
Well, they can reach out to you too, but I think it's just that recovery. There's a symbiosis we have with our relationship with alcohol and drugs. That when we step into the sobriety recovery world, when we see each other at these meetings, we like, yeah, I know. That's why I don't talk a lot about that the straw that broke the camel's back, the rock bottom, because I feel like yes, it's all different. Everybody's is different, but it's the same way. It's, just like everybody's house is different, but we all have concrete foundations and 2x4s and plywood, right? It's like, it's all very similar. And it's why I love talking about the recovery, because it's so unique for everybody.
I like that analogy. Yeah. We all have toilets in our home, hopefully. Yeah. But
well, you're doing amazing work with your house. Way to recreate your entire life. And, it's beautiful to have met you and to be able to share your story. And thank you for coming on and letting my listeners know more about you. It really was just an honor to have these last couple hours with you today.
Well, Jesse, I want to thank you because it has been an honor for me as well to be able to be in your presence and to have conversation and fellowship with you. It's I hope we can do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I talked about this with the sober experiment. I was like, this is not the last time that we will have one of these conversations. So so go off, be amazing, be blessed. We didn't even have a chance to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs or the Denver Broncos or football in general. Yeah, go Cubbies, baseball. We didn't have a chance to talk sports. Next time we will get into it more. Again, thank you so much. And for all of you out there listening, out there in the amazing world that we live in, always remember inclusivity over exclusivity, the power of positive energy, release and flow. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.